yo no tengo adversario, no. Con los yankees los me guanzato. A correr que otra vez lo sacamos al estadio. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado que nadie nos escuche. Cuidado. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Tú tienes piquete, mami, yo también. Tú estás buena, yo estoy bueno también. Huelo rico y ando con los de 100. Si tú lo quieres, lo tienes que mover. Lo tienes que mover.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So excited to see so many people joining us and still streaming in. My name is Grace Mauser, and I'm so proud to be one of the co-chairs of the largest chapter of the largest socialist organization in the country. As of today, NYC DSA has over 9,500 members, and there are over 80,000 members of our organization nationally. We are strong and we are growing, and our historic victory on Tuesday will only make us stronger. So I want to talk a little bit about the moment that we are in. So we have over 1,000 people watching this call, both on the Zoom and on streaming channels, and that is truly incredible. But it's also only a fraction of the 50,000 people who volunteered on this campaign. I'm actually going to pause for a moment while we get our slides in order, so forgive us. Okay, maybe not. I will keep going while we get our slides in order. So like I was saying, we have over 1,000 people on this call, but that's only a fraction of the 50,000 people who volunteered on this campaign. Together, those 50,000 people made 2.3 million calls and knocked on over 1.6 million doors. It's truly incredible. Honestly, it's insane what we have built and what we have won together. Together, we bucked decades of political punditry. Together, we felled an avatar of the political establishment. Together, we elected a socialist mayor of the largest city in the country. We did this with a massive and a historic coalition, and New York City DSA was the core of that coalition. NYC DSA has spent years building the muscles and the culture that created this core strategy and the ethos of this campaign. That's why Zohran made DSA his political home back in 2017. It's why our organization was able to propel him to the state assembly in 2020. It's how we built the structure to co-govern and organize alongside Zohran and our other 10 elected DSA officials. NYC DSA was able to do this because we build campaigns and governing infrastructure that believe that everyday New Yorkers can and should be active participants in the structures that affect their lives. We share our knowledge and our skills. We don't gatekeep. I reflect a lot on the fact that basically everything I know about organizing has come from fellow members of this organization. And I'm really, really excited for everyone here to be a part of that. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about who else is joining our call today. We have an incredible lineup of speakers ready. So Tasha Van Auken is the field director of Zohran for NYC. Many of you may also know her as the godmother of sorts of New York City's DSA's electoral strategy. We're also joined by Michael Lang, who is an advisor to the campaign, and also the author of Narrative Wars. And then finally, we will be joined by Alexa Aviles, who is the city council member for District 38, and she just won re-election as a socialist as well. I do want to flag, though, that Alexa is actively voting on the city budget right now. It may not be able to join us. If that's the case, her campaign manager will be joining us. So what will we be talking about? Our agenda is pretty packed, but we'll try to get you out of here in an hour. First, we're going to talk a little bit about how we got here. Then Tasha is going to share with us more about the field strategy behind how we knocked those 1.6 million doors. Michael will take us into a deeper look of the results. Alexa will talk about her own victory, especially over the insane amount of PAC spending that was spent in her race. And then we'll talk about what's next. So let's get into it. A quick history of DSA. A lot happened in these years, but collectively, we've been through these fights for almost a decade now. And that's why we were ready to be the engine behind this massive campaign. We've built a sustainable movement because we are a member organization that is funded by member dues and driven by member skills. We're not reliant on the whims of political classes. We create our own opportunities and we make ourselves ready to take advantage of broader political trends. Much of this started in 2016 when Bernie ran for president for the first time. And New York City DSA and DSA broadly decided it was time to get serious about running socialists for office and, more importantly, running to win those races. In 2017, we ran 2 city council races. We lost both, but we learned a lot about what it takes to run campaigns, to run a field operation. And we immediately put that information into action. In 2018, AOC won her congressional seat, the massive upset, earlier in June in the summer. And later that summer, Julia Salazar won her state Senate seat. This was really the first campaign that New York City DSA really owned from top to bottom, and it became a model for future races. In 2019, we ran Tiffany Caban for Queens DA. We really nearly won that. We lost by about 60 votes, which I always have in my head when I'm, struggling through canvassing. I'm like, we could win because I knocked 60 more doors. So keep that in mind as you continue door knocking. But this taught us that we can run big races. This was a borough-wide race, and it was really informative to how we can scale to meet the moment. In 2020, this was a really big year. So in 2020, we had the infrastructure that we built in 2017 through 2019. And this enabled us to capitalize on macro political trends, like upset over COVID and the George Floyd uprisings. We won 4 state legislative races, which enabled us to create our Socialists in Office committee. And we learned that it's key to stay organized through the years so that we're ready to take advantage of these moments when they happen. In 2021, we ran 6 city council races, and we lost more than we won. But we did build the capacity, and we learned to be attuned to how political trends affect us. We also passed massive taxes on the rich in Albany, and these were really the fruits of our successes in 2018 and 2020. In 2022, we defended our incumbents, and we gained ground even as we lost races, and despite it being a very low turnout year. We also targeted enemies of ours that made the success of the Build Public Renewables Act in 2023 possible. We intentionally targeted people who were blockers to this bill. And then in 2023, we in fact passed BPRA, which showed that we can really expand what the state can and should be doing for us. In 2024, we're busy. We run every year, basically. But in 2024, we continued to gain ground. And we also saw another product of our Albany success with good cause eviction, a major housing priority of DSA and the broader left housing movement pass. And then in 2025, of course, we had an incredible victory. I'm still honestly in shock. But what you can see as you look through all these years is that we don't always win, but we have always gained ground. We have always gotten stronger. And we have also always gained skills and we've gained capacity. And we've done that because of how we structure our campaigns and how we skill share among members so that we continue to have this capacity within DSA and also the broader left. And this ethos really, I think, propelled the Zoran campaign's field strategy and the campaign strategy overall. So with that, I'm honored to be able to pass it to my friend and a wonderful influence on the left and on DSA, Tasha, who was again the field director for Zoran for NYC.
Thank you, Grace. I'm so excited to be here. I hope everyone on this call and watching is also feeling that excitement. And feeling the energy and motivation and yeah, just also still processing everything. But this whole everything that has happened in the last 7 months is really just a story about so many people, about thousands and thousands of people who really dedicated so much of their time over the last 7 months to make this happen. So I'm gonna attempt to walk through some of the big picture things, both like the end results, very big picture end results. Michael, after me, will go into a lot more detail on election results. And then also, I think, sort of big picture orientation and approach to the field strategy on the campaign. But I love that Grace just presented the history because every single year and every single campaign that we've done has led to this and been a part of this. We've had 9 years of learning, basically. Sorry, I'm not doing math well right now, but we've had a lot of years to learn. So just quickly to go through some field numbers that you may have already heard, but just to run through them. This campaign made 1.6 million door attempts by the end of election day and 2.3 million phone dials. We had 30,000 plus unique active volunteers and 50,000 volunteer signups. So the active volunteers, meaning those are folks who signed up for phone or canvassing shifts. So there's a lot of other ways that people plugged in to volunteer in other projects, or folks who signed up to volunteer and wanted to volunteer. And in the next 4 months, we will get them to be an active volunteer. But that is just an enormous, enormous number. I'll also say that like that number is like not an insignificant number of the supporters we need to vote for us. So it was really exciting to work on a campaign where like our volunteer base was a significant portion of our voting base. We had 498 trained field leads, which is phenomenal. Basically, every canvass from beginning to end was led by a volunteer. This campaign, just to be completely frank, like could not have existed at the scale that it did citywide without this enormous number of people willing to step into leadership roles from day one and willing to take on pretty huge commitments leading a volunteer shift. Sometimes once a week, many times for many of these folks, they led multiple canvasses a week. We had more than 3,000, way more than 3,000, but it's hard to calculate exactly because of all of our petitioning events and high traffic canvassing events, but well over 3,000 canvasses over the course of 6 months in over 60 neighborhoods. So not only did we have canvasses pretty much every day of the week for most of the campaign, but we were all over the city. And these numbers are just astounding. So, you know, a lot of the goals that we set at the beginning of the campaign seemed pretty, like impossible, seemed very hard to reach. So lots of folks were like, this seems crazy. But the momentum was very clear from the beginning. Our first big canvas launch, which was the DSA field kickoff in December, was had hundreds of people attending across the city, and it was immediately clear that there was a real desire to get involved with this campaign. And again, this is just a testament to thousands and thousands of people who got involved, and many of them early on. So I'm going to talk mostly about just sort of the big picture components of the field strategy. And just quickly to say that I think the biggest thing we try to do on a campaign like this, and a huge part of the DSA electoral strategy, is to build a campaign that brings people in, that can take someone who is newly politicized through a moment, through the campaign, the moment of the campaign, and bring them into a campaign where they can learn skills, where they can feel what it is like to be part of building collective power, and where they hopefully get plugged in to people and organizations and build relationships in a way that keeps them political for the long term. I've worked on electoral campaigns since 2008. The 2008 Obama campaign was the first campaign I worked on. And I've seen several times, not in the last few years while at DSA, but I've seen several times campaigns happen, these sort of like moments of excitement, moments of activation. And when folks don't have a political home afterwards, that they can become deactivated. And so what we try to do, I think, through our campaigns, and what we definitely was a huge priority on this campaign, was make sure that this is a campaign that is plugging people into something long-term. And we started very early on this campaign, early in terms of what electoral campaigns will often do, which is like start at petitioning, which happens a little bit later in February. We started in December. And it's nice to start early because you immediately get off the ground, you knock some doors, you talk to voters, and those are important pieces, which I'll talk more about. But one of the biggest reasons that it's really great to start early is that we can build the structure for what we want to do at a larger scale throughout the campaign. So we, very early on December 14th, we had a citywide, it was the DSA field canvas launch, and it was a citywide launch. I believe we had canvases at 12 locations across the city. And we were able to sort of have this model that then we could show all the people who are volunteering. This is the model for the campaign. This is what we are trying to do. This is what we need more people to help lead if you're interested. And building out of that, we had several field lead trainings throughout the campaign. And at the field lead trainings, those were the first field lead training. I think we expected there to be about 50 people, and we had close to 100 people, and all of the field lead trainings were attended like that. There was enormous desire to be trained up as a field lead, to lead our canvases. And one of the things, and I mentioned this early about there being thousands of people, specifically 500 people who led our canvases, is these were all people, and I can't really emphasize the enormity of this. These are all people who stepped into leadership roles, which on a campaign like this means that you're taking responsibility for experiences that other people are having when they're coming into the campaign. And you're basically taking responsibility and making sure that they are joining an event and a campaign that is welcoming, that teaches them skills, and that makes them feel like they can also be a leader. So moving on to the next bullet point here, leadership replication everywhere. That's what we tried to do from day one, and that is something that we've done for years in DSA, is sort of looking at the definition of a leader. Leadership not being like, I know all the answers and I'm telling people what to do. Instead, leadership being like, I am going to step into this role and take responsibility, and help people come into roles as well, and identify other leaders, and ideally replicate myself, so that there is another person who can do what I do. And I think on this campaign, we really made it a goal. I made this my personal goal. I asked everyone on field staff to make it their goal. And we asked field leads, like, replicate yourself so that by the end of the campaign, there's 10 more of you, there's 50 more of you who can do what you do. And that really, a big part of this involves inspiring other people. And so every single person that stepped into a leadership role was responsible for inspiring other people that came into the campaign. And I think that's just like an enormously powerful thing that we ended up with 500 people who took that role on. I think it's also really important for us to go into a campaign like this, cool, calm leadership. So again, like, leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's about taking responsibility and troubleshooting and building trust and being able to resolve tensions and conflicts as they come up, as they always will on any big operation like this. And we just had amazing, amazing people from all of our field leads, the staff who built an enormous amount of trust across the entire campaign, and we were able to navigate a lot of challenges just in terms of like the amount of work that was happening and questions that came up and those kinds of things. So if there's one thing to really point to in terms of this strategy, it's just the amazing leadership that came into this campaign. The other thing that I think is very important for us to talk about and think through is being disciplined. Early on in the campaign, we spent about a really long time, about 2 months, building a voter universe for the campaign. And basically what a voter universe is we sort of create the definition of the voters that we are going to talk to during the campaign. In a city like New York City, even with as many volunteers as we had, we can't talk to every single person. It's just impossible. And many voters need multiple conversations, multiple what we call touches to remember to vote. Especially new and less likely voters need multiple bumps to vote. And so very early on, we built a voter universe that was included both folks we knew were going to vote and folks we believed would be likely to vote for us. And we also included a lot of folks who haven't voted recently in the last few years, but we felt like might become active for this campaign. And we created a lot of space for people who are new registrants becoming politically active for the first time. And then we revisited this universe of voters regularly. We looked at the data that came in. And we stayed the course. We stuck to our plan. And I think that this is a really important thing for the left to always take into account when embarking on anything, is to make sure that we're doing things based on like information that we can see and feel and calculate, which doesn't mean we're not responding to things that are different. In our case, we changed the universe throughout this campaign in different ways based on results that were coming back. We would go to more voters in areas where we had more volunteer capacity. We would expand that voter universe. We would talk to slightly different people. We would change our script based on what we were hearing. So definitely responsive to the circumstances, but I think it's really important for the left to be disciplined and to think really clearly about strategy and be aligned and then move together with that strategy. And then the last thing I want to shout out, and I left it for last because I think it's a really powerful piece. I've been a DSA member since 2017. I'm incredibly proud of all of the work that I've been a part of in DSA with so many others. And this campaign, one of the things that was really exciting to me about this campaign was we had this opportunity through this campaign to help build a strong left coalition of DSA and other member-based organizations that were early endorsers. And this is a campaign where I can say honestly that it worked and it was really incredible. The way that many different organizations who've been organizing in New York City for years worked together, did work on the ground, talked to different voters in different parts of the city where they'd been organizing, Other organizations had incredible outreach to voters in different languages. And many of these organizations, also very exciting to me, have like cross, our members are members of, their members are members of DSA. And I think coalition on the left is a tough thing historically, can be tough to build. And I'm really excited to say that this campaign was incredibly inspiring in, I think, being a part of helping to like continue, shape, and build that. And I hope that we can do a lot more of that. And yeah, I mean, I think my main takeaways, I want to go back to Grace's timeline, because this was my biggest thought election night, was just how hard everything felt a year ago. Things felt very hard. Turnout was very low during the primary last year, especially amongst younger voters. And I think there are obviously still many, many hard things in this moment politically happening at the national level, especially. But I love that timeline because you can see that like the hard years build for the next years. And it really, to me, like amplifies the urgent and important need for people who are becoming political now to join an organization, and to find a political home so that they can stay political through this incredible moment. But then also, next year we are going to have a lot of work to do after the general election, and make sure that all those ups and downs, people have a political home where they can continue to learn and feel connected and know that it is a bump in the road towards something greater. So just enormous, enormous gratitude to the thousands of volunteers on this campaign and staff who are all incredible. Several are on this call, and everyone else on this call, and all of my friends at DSA. And I'm going to pass it back over to you, Grace.
Thank you, Tasha. Always so great to like hear from you and learn from your insights, and we're all lucky to get to learn and work with you. So now I get to pass it to another very smart person, Michael Lang, who is the author of Narrative Wars, and a great social media follow, if you haven't, is with us. So I'm going to pass it over to him to talk a little bit more about what the results mean and how we should interpret them. So Michael, over to you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Grace. Tasha is a very tough act to follow, and I've not spoken in front of 600 people ever, so I'm definitely going to do the best I can. As far as speaking to Zohran's kind of coalition of the in-between, as I like to call it, I would like to direct everyone's attention to this lovely graphic that the New York Times made for us on the right. First, I want to speak about kind of where Andrew Cuomo's support came from. His support very neatly almost bookended kind of the opposite ends of the economic spectrum. He did very well with most low-income voters in the city, and he did even better with the most wealthy voters in the city, right? Like Fifth Avenue, Central Park West, Riverside Drive, Park Avenue, right? And then also in middle-class Black districts and Orthodox and Hasidic Jewish areas, right? Where Zohran Mamdani really broke through is kind of in between, right? In that middle. And that middle has a very wide spectrum, right? If you look at that map on the right, you see that middle-income residents make up 49% of precincts in the city. And you look at the bottom right, you see renters. Renter majority precincts make up 70% of the city. So if you look at that table, these two coalition pieces that Zohran did so well in are the largest kind of segments of this electorate, right? And I think there are many prisms that you can view the results in. I think age is certainly a really dominant look, and I think explains a lot. But I would also say that this kind of middle income, whether it's like working class neighborhoods, right? Like Elmhurst, Sunset Park, right? Middle class neighborhoods, maybe like Astoria, and even upper middle class neighborhoods, right? Like Prospect Heights, Park Slope, things of the sort. The thing that kind of unites them is, of course, not only that they are young-ish, but that these folks are renters, right? And I think that kind of coalition building out from the middle is really where a leftist, a socialist can do really well. And that's what Zohran Mamdani did here, particularly performing well in white, Hispanic, and Asian neighborhoods. And I think, again, another big meta takeaway is that campaigns still really matter, right? There was a ton of outside spending in this race to the tune of over $25 million, right? And the Cuomo thesis was that this spending, coupled with name recognition and just absent really any type of affirmative message at all, would be enough to win. Whereas the Mamdani thesis was that, hey, we have to relentlessly work to kind of expand and build that base, right? And not take any voter for granted. Let's build to expand the electorate, right? So Cuomo took working class voters for granted. Zohran worked relentlessly, right? Meeting people not only where they're at physically, but in their native language, on the mediums that which they frequent, to kind of build that trust and support, which is a very difficult task to accomplish in such a short time. This time last year, Zohran Mamdani citywide probably had 1 or 2% name recognition. To build that trust with so many New Yorkers, particularly to build the trust with New Yorkers who, let's say, they may engage less frequently with politics, right? For good reason, I would add. To build trust with those folks takes a lot of work. And it's because of folks like Tasha, who really made sure that the campaign showed up in every neighborhood, that this was a 5-borough campaign that met New Yorkers where they were at, on the mediums where they were, and in their native language. So if you don't mind me, please go to the next slide. And then, so here we go, the meta narrative. I think my big 3 kind of takeaways in assessing the Zohran coalition is that number 1 was just base building, right? We know that the progressive left is very well in these younger renter-heavy neighborhoods, right? As you can see on the map, right? The cluster of orange Mamdani dots is very kind of strongest in that area that I like to call the Kami corridor, right? But the thesis there was that 4 years ago, a lot of young people went to the polls and they weren't even really particularly engaged or courted by a campaign, right? What if a campaign really decided, hey, we're going to reach out to young voters across the city? What could happen? And on Tuesday, you saw exactly what that happened. In certain districts, turnout went up 30, 40, 50% compared to 4 years ago, with an accompanied kind of increase in vote share. In some of these areas, Zohran Mamdani did 20, 30, 40% better than Maya Wiley did, right? And that was just because his campaign became really ubiquitous to young voters in particular, but increasingly people all over the city with paid media, but really kind of juicing the base was a huge part in that. But then you have to pay, winning these neighborhoods alone is not enough to earn a citywide majority, right? And so part of that is, again, making those working class inroads in places like Upper Manhattan and places like Central Brooklyn, right? Areas that Eric Adams, without fail, won 4 years ago, right? But that, again, Andrew Cuomo kind of took some of these neighborhoods for granted, whereas the Mamdani campaign relentlessly canvassed and worked to appeal to voters, right? And this is kind of where a narrative that has taken hold about the progressive left really kind of falls apart here, because in areas like Central Brooklyn, areas like Upper Manhattan, if the Zohran campaign, if their influence was really truly limited to, a younger professional class, you would not see the clean sweep of precincts across all of these neighborhoods that you did on Tuesday, right? I mean, this was basically a blowout, right? In many of these areas that Eric Adams won by 20 or 30 points last time. And then lastly, perhaps most importantly, is just, the quote unquote, a lower propensity voter activating young voters, but also just kind of bringing Latino and Asian New Yorkers kind of back into the Democratic coalition. There was a wonderful graphic that the New York Times published today that really showed that, again, comparing 2021 to 2025, that there was significantly higher turnout amongst young people. But we found that it's not just young people in any particular neighborhood or borough, that it was really young people all throughout the city, right? Native New Yorkers, non-native New Yorkers. And I think that is something that the campaign should be absolutely really proud of, because it also, again, it kind of brings home that its appeal to younger voters, it was not limited to any one kind of part of the coalition. And I think you saw that throughout the city, kind of I wrote an article on this months ago, but in many parts of New York, the electorate, it skews very old, right? Because younger voters, they've never really been given a reason to engage. And you saw Mamdani's campaign, they really kind of brought down that average age of the electorate. They really brought in people from 18 to 44. And that really is that is the big consequence here of reshaping the political map, not just in New York City, but this is something that will have reverberations all around the country. So I have the easy job. I just get to talk about it. All credit goes to Tasha and Grace and Gustavo. So anyway, that's my spiel. Thank you folks for having me on.
Thank you, Michael. Always so enlightening. I feel like I see a new element of every race every time you talk. So thanks for joining us. So now I am honored to be able to pass it to a fellow member of DSA and a reigning champ, city council member who defeated APAC and defeated terrible billionaire and millionaire PACs to defend her seat and defend our territory in Sunset Park, Alexa Aviles. Alexa, welcome. So happy to have you.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? So great. So I forget there's like 628 people on this call. It's unbelievable. So great to hear from Tasha and certainly Michael. Amazing work. I think the big story for our win is the story that you have heard much about Zoran's campaign. It's the we did that thing. We did it together, right? And that's like the most important thing. I feel like we should really like continue to remind ourselves that it is that collective power building, right? That is able to move these campaigns forward. And it's for sure this primary cycle, we took on some real power players here, right? Hedge fund billionaires, corporations, Rebney, and they did the thing that they always do. They pour money, they use the same apparatus, and they think the electorate is just so dumb and gullible. And in fact, the reason why I say some of that is because some of the mailers that they sent out in our race were very reminiscent to the mailers that they sent out in 2001. Like they didn't actually even like really change it up. They didn't realize that, in fact, some of the most egregious, ridiculous claims that they made that just New Yorkers would be like, this is so dumb. I think I might actually vote for her. And in fact, in some instances, they never even translated the mailers. And I had constituents who came, they saw my picture, and even though it was a little like off, they would come and they'd be like, I got your stuff. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, without even having actually recognized that it was like an anti-mailer. So I think the truth is, like, we saw in our race that the real estate and pro-Israel lobby spent upwards of $500,000 trying to buy this seat. Clearly, they wasted a hell of a lot of money. They clearly wasted a hell of a lot of money on Zoran. And that brings me so much delight. So, I have everyone to thank for that. And, I think what's clear is they want to unseat us because we have people power, right? Because we continue to stand on our issues unapologetically, with an enormous amount of conviction, with information, right? Where we are serious policymakers. We're not fucking around. We take this work very, very seriously, and it's kind of very hard to navigate those things. I mean, I think they think we're just like fly by night, like, I mean, why would anyone want to spend all their time doing this crazy shit? But we're dedicated to it because we're dedicated to our movement. And so, I think this is why these victories, right? Shahana, who was able to hold her seat, myself, and Zoran. I mean, this was a huge shock to the system that while they tried to bring all their toys, to the game, they had to go back home with them and they lost big. Of course, it means that bullies persist, right? They're going to come back with more money and more insanity. They're going to try to wedge people. They're going to try to do all the things that they do on a regular. And so I think, for us, obviously, we're going to need to continue to press forward. And many of the things that Tasha said, I think, resonated so deeply. Sticking with the plan, right? It's so easy to be like, oh, like want to respond. I have problems with it sometimes. I want to like shift but there's so much fundamental truth in sticking with the plan and being disciplined. And certainly our canvases, I mean, I think we, in many ways, Zoran's campaign and our campaign started out together, and it was a great way to move forward in community, because the energy around Zoran, if you knew him, like everybody was set to go. But if you knew me, you knew that you were building on a track record. And so many of our community members knew that. And so there was like an incredible merging of the two that I think was just really effective, certainly in our community, that really helped, I think, with all the momentum. But certainly, I think, what we saw is we stood proudly on all of our issues, regardless of how folks may have felt controversial they were. I mean, we were proud and consistent around calling for ceasefire in Gaza, proud and consistent around holding the dignity of people, proud and consistent around the release of Mahmoud Khalil, proud and consistent that Eric Adams was a bully and he was cutting budgets when he didn't need to. And we were very learned and very clear with our demands. And so while the mainstream media obviously tries to paint us as, radical, whatever, I think we showed them, y'all. We showed them that actually this radical agenda really resonated with a hell of a lot of people, and really resonated with young people. In fact, I was at a block party like 2 days ago, and there were all these college students. It was like a group of like 10 or 15 boys, and they were so excited. And they each told me stories about how they ran home to make sure that they would make it to vote. One kid was like running across Brooklyn. The other one was like, I was on the subway and I was so stressed because it was so important to me. These campaigns really connected with them, and they made that effort. And it was just really moving to hear that, right? To hear that kind of energy. And I just reminded them that this is what it looks like when we pull together, right? When we show collective power, and that they were coming for us, and they're going to need to do that again, but they're going to need to bring 5 friends each. Because without that, right, they're going to do all kind of shenanigans. And I was like, I need y'all to commit to me right here on this sidewalk that that's what you're going to do. And they were like, we're down with it. We're down with it. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna find each and every one of you, because I know who the heart of the nucleus is. But I mean, I think, it is both that energy. It is both the brilliance of the Zoran campaign. It is both the hard work that we were building on. But not only in our office, but certainly Tiffany's, all the state SIO. I mean, this is the building of a movement, right? And all these incredible lessons that folks have mentioned earlier. And so, we're not going anywhere, that's for sure. And I think I'm proud to say we had a commanding 44-point lead over our opponent. So we crushed that. Which, I'm being very tame now. I got a potty mouth, so I'm not gonna curse tonight. I'm gonna take a day off. So the blowout feels good, but what really felt even better was obviously the citywide blowout against Rebney, which is the real estate against Uber, Solidarity Pack, and all these hedge fund bros. And all these people who are investing in Trump, right? Because what we see is that they want the status quo. The status quo works really well for all of them. And, I think it's these races, right? And it's building this coalition that is going to be able to break through, kind of this status quo apparatus that they got going on. And so I think, the stakes are really high. Obviously, you see how hard they've come out swinging after our wins, and certainly they're going to keep swinging. And so I think for us, the wise words again of Tasha, we got to stay focused. We must stay disciplined. We must not get baited into fighting every single fight that is out there, but really like keep our eyes focused on obviously making history, on doing the thing that we believe in, and building the socialist future that we totally believe in. And so, I guess for all those of you, I suspect most of you are DSA members, but if you're not, what's up? Come on in. We need you. We need you to join. We need your dues. We need you to continue to hit the pavement with us and bring 5 friends each. And let's continue to build this. It's a very exciting time. And I'm just going to end with saying really, truly deep gratitude to everyone. I mean, it was a scorcher, 122 billion degrees. And, people were out there with energy and just so much commitment. Whether it was the freezing of the rent or the universal childcare, or just the fact that, this campaign brought joy and a different vision, or that, I like to curse a lot and I don't give a fuck and I'm going to do what I want to do. Whatever it was, it was important to hold it together. And so I just want to welcome everyone to join us, and let's keep building, this future that we all deserve, honestly. And so just a lot of gratitude to each and every person who contributed in whatever way they did, because it made a huge difference. And, Tasha, Michael, Grace, y'all are brilliant and amazing. And I have a lot of gratitude for you all.
Let's hear it for Alexa. Drop some emojis in the chat. Alexa is modest, but she won her race she got over 70% of the vote share. This movement, together with Alexa, steamrolled the opposition. We thoroughly defeated the capitalist class in Sunset Park and in the city. And if you're a worker in New York City, Zoran is our candidate. Today, the New York City Central Labor Council, AFL-CIO, endorsed Zoran. That means that today, New York City's labor movement endorsed a Democratic Socialist for mayor. I want to shout out every union member here, shout out to every worker who pushed their union to endorse this campaign. My name is Gustavo. I'm co-chair of New York City DSA, and I'm a union electrician. It's an honor to be part of a labor movement that is welcoming a candidate rooted in class struggle. Organized labor saw a candidate inspire young people, immigrants, and the working class. They had a choice to turn away from the city or to embrace democracy. And I think it's a sign of what's to come that the labor movement chose to embrace democracy. That's what our movement for democratic socialism is all about. We want to grow and strengthen democracy and build it everywhere. Part of our historic accomplishment this election is redrawing the electorate. It was so historic that no poll could predict that young people under 40, would vote at higher rates than anyone else in the city. It was inconceivable to the establishment and the political experts that a grassroots campaign could activate and politicize New Yorkers at this scale, which no one had ever done. But all of you did that. We did it together. The fight is not over. I want to talk about the importance of building this project, The first time, that's right, Michael got it. He called it. The first time I ever canvassed for any political campaign was when I volunteered for AOC's first primary in 2018. I was no one special on the campaign. I had no special role. I was an ordinary volunteer, but seeing her win changed my life. It showed me that ordinary people could come together, take on the most powerful people in society, and fight for a different vision and win. And seeing Zoran last Tuesday giving his victory speech, saying that in our New York, the power belongs to the people, felt like another turning point for me. We have an opportunity to reject the New York City that is a playground for the rich. We have an opportunity to rebuild a New York City for the working class. But it's a collective project, and it's going to take organization and it's going to take discipline. Like Alexa told us, the billionaires are organizing. They will not sit out the general, but we've defeated them once and we can defeat them again. So I have 3 asks for you to close out the call. The first one is to join DSA. I know a lot of people watching on the Zoom are DSA members. If you're streaming, you're probably not a DSA member. The time to join is now. You don't have to resign yourself to doom scrolling or feeling bad about politics online. You can be part of a community that looks around and thinks a better world is possible. And not only do we think a better world is possible, but we're fighting for it and we're bringing it into reality. My second ask for you, yeah, please drop the link to join DSA in the chat. Dues start at $15 a month, but if you're low income, you can pay less. If you can't afford dues at all, you can request a dues waiver, which we grant to anyone who requests it. I'm going to take a few minutes for everyone who's watching the stream or who hasn't joined yet to open the link and join DSA.
Gustavo, while we're waiting, do you want to tell us about when you joined DSA?
Yes. So I joined DSA during the first Trump administration. I knew a little bit about socialism from Latin American history. I'm Peruvian, but I never thought that there could ever be a mass base for our politics for socialism in the United States back then in 2016. Seeing Bernie run and build a mass movement was the first time in my life that I thought there really could be a mass movement for this kind of politics, that we really could win what we didn't have to compromise our values. And now, you know, I've never felt it more in my bones seeing Zoran's election results on Tuesday and everything that has happened since then. All right, our second ask tonight is to celebrate with other Zoran and Alexa volunteers at Nowadays in Ridgewood, not this Saturday, but the next Saturday, July 12th. And somebody is going to drop a link to sign up for the Nowadays volunteer party. And we have a QR code on the screen as well. All are welcome. And finally, the last ask that we have for you today is to join our electoral working group's mayoral race debrief. Where do we go from here? It will be a deeper dive into the campaign than we've done on this call today. It will be in person on Monday, July 14th. So if you're a DSA sicko, you can do all 3 of these things. But if you're on this call or you're watching the stream, my ask is that you at least do one of these 3 things. seeing the election results, I felt actually, of course, a lot of joy, but I felt also a lot of stress and fear about the scale of our responsibility now. But in the weeks since the election, I've seen people take on this task, step up to the moment, and we're really welcoming all of you to do the same tonight. If you were already a volunteer, solidarity, now is the moment to join our movement. So many people have joined, have become politicized, voted for the first time. And now is the time to join an organization for the first time, potentially. So those are all my asks for tonight. We're ready to close out probably. Grace, do you have any last words for the call?
Not really. I think you summed it up. I'll just say, I'll reiterate what I said, that truly everything I learned as an organizer is from the people in this organization, many of whom are here. So if you want to do what Gustavo said, if you want to take action, if you want to stop doom scrolling, if you want to feel like you have power in our system, because you do, you should join DSA. You should learn from the incredible collective knowledge and skills we have, and empower yourself and empower everyone around you because of it. But with that, I think we'll close. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you in advance for joining DSA. We're so excited to meet new members. We're so excited to meet members that maybe are reactivated now that we have a socialist mayor and a city to win and to govern. And we really appreciate your time. We'll see you in the streets.